really use that energy of that speed during your bottom turn, and it should feel like you're blowing up at the lip. It should feel like you're bouncing off the bottom into the top.
Welcome to the Basis Surf Podcast. We got my buddy Anton. He's a surf coach, used to compete a ton, French, but spent majority of your childhood, I think, in kind of Ventura, Santa Barbara area in California, and now lives in El Salvador. He's a surf coach, shreds. I mean, I just remember that one wave I saw you on. I think I was getting out of the water, and then I just see you like huck this big air. In that section, you're doing it like right where, the shore kind of, the wave kind of like ends there. And if you land in the flats, you're in like 1 foot of water. And yeah, so that was super gnarly. That was a sick one though. So very psyched to have you on, man. How's it going?
It's going good, man. Thank you. Yeah, Matadero will really rock your world if you catch a little rail in the flats there. But yeah, I'm stoked, dude. I'm stoked that you're doing this podcast. I've seen a lot of cool stuff that you're doing, and I'm excited to be here.
Hell yeah. Well, first question I have for you, I was just checking, I saw your story earlier today, and it looks like you like got this massive ding in the tail of your board. What happened with that, man?
I have no clue. I just went to California for 3 days and came back into my house, and my board's torn apart on the tail. I literally don't know what happened. Maybe it was my last session. Maybe my dogs jumped on it while I was gone. I don't know, but that's a bummer. It's a nice Sharp Eye surfboard, custom, so that's a bummer.
Dude, I think you know what it is. You just have too much power in your turns, bro. You need to chill out. Like your Sharp Eyes can't handle all that power in your back foot. I think that's the reality of it.
That's that big boy stuff,
Well, just more cushion for the pushing.
That's right.
Sick. Well, why don't we start from the beginning? I mean, I want to go through your career, coaching, and all that, but let's start at the beginning.
For sure.
Just where, I know that you guys are from France, so why don't we start there? Like, how did you get into surfing? Did you start surfing in France? Where in France are you from, and all that?
Yeah, so I was born and raised in Brittany, France, the Celtic part, northwest. It's like 5-6 hours in a car above Hossegor. I know most people know where Hossegor is. We're in the cold part up there. We get some good waves sometimes, but it's cold. It's rough surfing. It really sets you up for a more pleasant time wherever you go after that. But yeah, I learned how to surf there. Started when I was like 3 years old. My dad pushed me in the waves. My dad owned a surf shop and a skate park, and at night it turned into this surf skatey like bar / concert spot. It was really cool. So I just grew up with a bunch of surfers and skaters in the northwest of France over there.
Interesting. So did your dad have you on a skateboard and on a surfboard at the same time? Were you like ripping around like a young Jackson Dorian on a skateboard and stuff, or what?
I don't think I was ripping as hard as Jackson is, but yeah, my first toys were skateboards and surfboards. I didn't have your typical childhood. It was super surf oriented, but I wasn't forced into it or anything. I had my dad's side and my mom's side. On my dad's side, I just surfed and skated. My mom was a little more traditional, but I just loved the surfing and skateboarding side of things, and that was what excited me the most when I was a kid.
Yeah. Do you remember any specific experience that like made you fall in love with surfing?
Yeah, I mean, like the first time, I don't remember exactly my first wave because I was so young, but I remember the first time I kind of turned the board a little bit. It was like a little mushy wave my dad pushed me into, and it like kept reforming so I could actually try to go right, and then it turned into a little left at this little mushy surf spot. So yeah, I'll always remember that. I remember the feeling of looking at like not being on whitewater and being on the actual face of the wave and just like being pushed by it. I thought it was so cool, and so it became so addicting right away. I just wanted to do that.
Yeah, that's great. That's sick. So at what age did you move from France to the US?
We moved to the USA, California specifically, when I was 13 years old.
Okay.
My mom passed away when I was 10, and it kind of rocked the whole family. And my dad and I just decided to get a fresh start. And I was with Rip Curl at the time, so it was cool for me to be able to transition to the California competitions and stuff like that for the Groms. So yeah, it just made sense for me to go towards a more surf cultured place, if I'll say.
Yeah. Okay, so you so at 13 you were already like competing, you had sponsors, you were like full into that, surf world and competition
Yeah.
and all that.
Yeah, I was almost more into it there than ever. That's when I was really excited about trying to be a pro surfer and stuff. I never really was a pro surfer. I never made a whole career out of it. Like I made some money here and there, but I think to be a pro surfer, you got to really make a living out of it, professional. So I don't think I can consider myself an ex-pro surfer or whatever, but I definitely was very competitive. I enjoyed it. I hated losing. I loved winning. And California really brought that side out of me right when we moved there. It was so competitive. So many kids surf so good. There's so many
Hmm.
waves. And yeah, it was just a big move for us. It was a good move, though.
Got it. Well,
Hmm.
would you say that you were always naturally pretty talented at surfing? I mean, what was it like in Brittany versus like when you get to California? I mean, you mentioned that like you made that shift and all of a sudden you're like, well, it was
Hmm.
good for you in a way, but challenging probably in other ways, right? Like, how would you describe it?
I had a knack for it always, but there were always kids that were more talented than me. But I surfed a lot. I refused to get out of the water. I was a crazy little kid. I was so frustrated during sessions that I was like, I'm not getting out of here until I get like what I would consider like a seven, or something like that. I was always thinking like scores, and I would always tell myself there's 5 minutes left and you need a seven. So it was a fun slash very frustrating experience, and I loved it. I loved the whole thing.
Wow. So
Hmm.
even at that age, you had that mentality of like, I have 5 minutes to get a seven. That sounds
Yeah,
intense, dude.
yeah. I forget who told me that. It was one of the guys I look up to, and I was like, wow, like that's a good way to really just make things happen. So yeah, loved it.
Wow,
Hmm.
interesting. And so then you also grew up. I mean, so what are the waves like in Brittany? I mean, I remember your dad telling me like some of it, but like, how would you describe surfing in Brittany to, everybody?
It gets really big, really stormy, but we get windows of like offshore winds, and it gets really good. It's if the sandbars are right, you can get like the best barrel of your life. You can also get like the worst wipeout of your life. It's really heavy, so it's
Uh,
it's just heavy most of the time.
yeah. And
And
is
then
it like, mm,
in the
sorry, go ahead.
summertime we get a little more fun stuff. Kind of like goes back to the head high and offshore winds and stuff. But yeah, when it gets a little too gnarly for me and over there, I'm not a big gnarly guy, so I like more technical surfing, and surfing in
Mm,
Brittany can be challenging for sure.
got it. And is it beach breaks? I think you mentioned is mostly beach breaks.
Mostly
Okay.
beach breaks. You got a couple reefs. They're not world class by any means, but you got a couple reefs along the Côte Sauvage. It's like the wild coast in
Yeah.
Quiberon, and you definitely get a couple reefs. I never really surf them because when I go there, it's usually around summertime, and it's not big enough for those. But
Yeah.
yeah, I see the photos and the clips of the boys going absolutely crazy over there.
Hmm.
Hmm.
How do you think, um, your early like formative years of surfing at beach breaks, like wild, unruly beach breaks, shape your surfing, and then eventually go into like perfect points in
Yeah,
California, which are like softer. Like, what was that like?
it was awesome because I'm a firm believer that if you can surf really bad waves, okay, you'll surf really good waves really good. So for me, it was a really nice transition going from that stormy surf to that more classic point break, and even like just beach breaks that open up more peakier. So yeah, it was really nice to finally, and I had seen California surf videos a bunch, and I was just like, wow, I want to get in that gloomy, glassy, uh, just sexy waves.
Yeah, I'm sure they look super sexy as opposed to just like massive,
Yeah,
like closeout beach break barrels
yeah,
that just like chomp your board. You
yeah.
know, it's so interesting too that you say that. What was yeah, just because like I get a lot of comments, for example. So when I post a clip of whatever, like I did a clip of like Victor Bernardo. I interviewed Victor Bernardo, and then
Wow.
there were so many people commenting. They were like, "Well, you can surf like that because you surf perfect waves," and I'm like.
Uh, mhm.
True, like yeah, he's surfing perfect waves, but like he grew up surfing like crappy beach breaks, and that
Yeah,
you know
that's
that
why.
that's why he can surf those waves. And,
That's
and I
why.
feel like they're almost like giving themselves an excuse as to why, And I'm just like, you should be using that as motivation to like, hey, this is actually going to make you a better surfer. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? And do you
Yeah.
agree with that? Is that the way you
Oh
think
yeah,
about it?
yeah. A lot of people will do this whenever like they'll talk about the Coffin Brothers a lot because the Coffin Brothers got to grow up in California and have an amazing amount of traveling to Fiji and Hawaii. It'd be better to ask them, but I mean, I've heard a lot of people be like, yeah, well, they've gotten to travel and surf all these perfect waves. I'm like, dude, those guys have the talent that it takes to surf those waves. Some of those waves those guys surfed growing up are waves that you would have sat on the boat and been like, no way, dude, I'm not going out there. So it's like, yeah, it's nice to have some good waves to practice on, but it's all the stuff that goes before that that I think really makes a really good surfer.
Totally, totally.
Yeah.
I mean, it's a reminder to me as well, because you can always get lazy. I live in
Mm-hmm.
Brooklyn, and it's a little bit to the beach. It's like 45 minutes to the beach, and I see the forecasting is crap, and I'm just like, oh, should I go
Yeah.
out? But then I'm like, no, I should go out. Like I really
Yeah.
should, But it can be hard, and I understand. I'm sure people that are listening to this podcast can empathize. Like you look at the forecast and you're like, oh, it doesn't look that good, but you
Mm-hmm.
probably still should get out there and do it, right? So
Always get out there. Always get some surfing in there. Get some practice. It's good for you. It's good for your soul. It's fun too. Like it's just surfing. It's not
yeah,
like you're like doing some crazy stuff. It's just surfing. You paddle out. You get some waves, and you'll be all right.
right.
Mm-hmm.
And so, what was it like then? You moving to California?
Well, moving to California was a cultural shock. First, I didn't speak English, neither did my father. So we had to learn that. I learned it real quick. I learned it like listening to like gangster rap and like reading the lyrics. That's why sometimes I sound the way I do. But yeah, it was a cultural shock. School was a trip. All the kids were like surrounding me, like this is the French kid, like surfer kid, like let's ask him how to say this in French and this in French. But I had a couple of homies that were like, hey, like leave him alone, you know. So
Yeah.
it was cool. It was fun. It was a different lifestyle. It was what I've seen on TV my whole life, so I was very starry-eyed about it.
Yeah. Okay.
Mhm.
And then, so that's from like a cultural standpoint. What about like surfing? Did you like jump right into competing? Like because I think you mentioned that, right? Well, was there
Yeah,
like a shift that occurred in terms of like surfing different waves and then just surfing against different? I mean, I'm assuming in the U.S. people are like, I'm gonna raise my kid to be a pro surfer at like whatever age. There's a lot of
yeah,
that as well. But like, what was
yeah.
that? What was that like?
It was crazy. It was intimidating. I did really bad at competitions at first. I had a really hard time. I was losing out first heat in the NSSAs and stuff, and it took me a couple of years to start making heats. But as soon as I started making heats, the confidence happened, and I won a couple of contests, quite a few NSSAs, and started making a couple of heats and a few QSs. I didn't do a lot of QSs, but the few that I did, I got to make a couple of heats here and there, and it was fun. It was just a crazy experience. I was really starstruck a lot of the time. I'd see like Kolohe and Dino and Luke Davis and the Coffin Brothers and all those guys like, and I was like, wow, these guys are scary, dude. But it was a fun experience for me to get out of my shell a little bit. I was a pretty shy kid and a little insecure, so it was fun. It brought a lot out of me for sure.
Hmm. That's so interesting. Yeah, I
Hmm.
can only imagine what it's like going from looking, like studying somebody and being like, I'm such a fan of your surfing, and then next thing you know, they're like in your heat, and you're like, oh, I
Yeah,
gotta beat this person. Like that must be so hard mentally.
yeah.
Like,
It was hard mentally and physically, man. Those guys, since they were kids, they were just so hard to beat. Man, but it was really cool. Like I'd put on my jersey and see Kolohe next to me and be like, whoa, that's crazy, you know?
yeah, crazy.
Yeah.
And what was it like? Or first, let's start kind of at the first question I had for you, which is like, so you mentioned that like in the beginning you struggled, but then eventually you began to make heats. Like, what do you think was that shift that allowed you to and get better results like that?
I think it was airs. I started doing airs, and I just couldn't land an air forever, and I landed one in the middle of a surf contest. I was practicing, and I landed one, and then I just like couldn't stop trying them over and over again. And I was skateboarding a lot, so that helps a lot with airs. And yeah, I quickly became like the guy that either gets nines or twos. I would just
Right.
get a wave, maybe do a little check turn and hunt for that big section and try big moves. So once I
Mm,
started doing that consistently, I started making heats, and it changed a lot of things for me.
Got it. And so what was your process for learning airs? Like, was it you just figuring it out, just going a million reps and just going for it? Like, what was that process like for you?
Yeah, just hucking him skateboarding, eating a lot of shit skating, and just trying to bring that to surfing. Also realizing that a lot of people can.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.
Throw airs, and like a lot of people try to do airs, but they give up as soon as their board hits the water again, because it's tough to land an air. The wave's going to try to buck you off, and you got to fight it. You got to fight to stay on your board. It's like king of the surfboard. You got to stay on there, you know? So yeah, that realization of, I got to stay on this board. I got to land this. Like, the wave's going to try to buck me off, and I'm not going to let it.
Interesting. Wow. And that must be like, I don't know, so hard to be like learning a new technique. Like, you're figuring out how to do airs, and then you got to apply it in the pressure of competition as well against your heroes. That just sounds like super gnarly.
it takes definitely a level of like confidence, like having landed enough airs on the same sections that you see during your heats to know that, all right, I think I can do this. I do it. So why wouldn't I be able to do it right now? And gotta not look at your jersey, and like not look at the other people's jerseys, and listen to the commentator and stuff. I think you just got to get in your zone and trust your surfing.
Got it. Interesting. And practicing on a skateboard, it sounds like you said, was really helpful because you can just do unlimited reps. Although it's probably not exactly the same thing, but you can practice a lot of similar things, right? So,
and it's helpful skateboarding, and it's hurtful too. Like you can help yourself with skateboarding. I mean, with skateboarding, you can help yourself a lot, but you can hurt yourself a lot too, and be out of the water for months, like twisted ankles or whatever, and that hurts your surfing too. So skateboarding is good for your surfing to a certain degree.
Yeah, you know, on the hurting yourself point, it's like, it's interesting that you brought that up, because I have one buddy who's like skated his entire life, I think. And he still, freak accident, broke his leg right before he was moving down to Costa Rica, and like just like out of the water for like a year. And this is a guy that like surfing, skating forever. And then I had another buddy, he was like, oh, I want to improve my surfing, so I'm going to try skating. And he broke his leg as well. So I'm just like, it's kind of gnarly.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of people hurt themselves. A lot of people will ask me, like, should I skate, like, to help my surfing? I'm like, well, slow down. Like, do you skate already? Like, don't go, like, try to drop into a ramp and bust the air. Like, you're going to break your ankle. You're not going to be surfing. That's not going to help anybody. So yeah. Take it slow, right?
Yeah. It can be helpful, but you got to really take it slow.
Definitely take it easy.
Yeah. Actually, I'm thinking about my brother as well. Like, we were just like messing around, and like first session, like he like sprains his wrist right before we're going on a surf trip too. It was like disastrous, Anyway, skating, good and bad to it. Just be careful. That's the main takeaway. So that's super interesting. So then you were competing a bunch. I mean, so how far did you get with the competition? I mean, I remember you were telling me you got some pretty good results. I remember you telling me, like, when we were hanging.
I think the best result I had, this is funny, it was the NSSA Westerns Air Show. It was the California Championships, and I won the air show part of it, which was cool. It was against like a bunch of really good guys. I think there was Luke Davis, Sam Orozco, I can't recall everybody. I was like 18, 19, and this was right before I hit my head skating really bad. I lost a big window of memory, but
oh wow.
This was a good result for me. They give money at NSSA to people who win air shows. At least back then they did. So that was my first time making a good little amount of money from a surf contest, and it was cool because it was an air show, which is what I really pride myself on, the airs, since I'm a kid. So.
Oh, that's epic! Wow.
Yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, that sounds sick. Oh,
and
man,
I won the Northern Conference of NSSA and the Southern Conference of NSSA, and then with the WQS thing, I like I said, I would just make a heat or two here and there, and then I'd get against guys like that just smoke me. Yeah.
And yeah, it must be so hard. I mean, having competed against these guys, like, I mean, I've been to a lot of spots and I've seen pros in the water, and their surfing is just, it's like they're playing a different sport sometimes. So you're just like,
Yeah.
what? What did
Yeah.
you just do?
Yeah.
You know, but what do you observe? I mean, because you're an incredible surfer, you're doing crazy airs, and then when you look at these guys, what do you see? You know, is there anything that you notice that kind of pokes out at you?
Yeah, I see the flow, man. The flow and the speed these guys get. Here in El Zonte, we get the the whole WSL shows up for the Punta Roca contest, and I just sit there and I watch them, and you can see the difference between guys like me and guys like them. It's the flow, the speed, the connection, the creativity. It's really crazy. Me, I feel like when I'm surfing, you can kind of tell what I'm gonna do. I don't know how you'd say it, like it's easy to see what I'm gonna do on the wave. These guys like Ethan Ewing is crazy watching him surf. You have no idea. He does this beautiful bottom turn, and you don't know if he's gonna blow the fins out or do a crazy layback hack under the lip, or it's just so crazy. These guys have a different level of creativity. The little twitch reflexes they have is just so crazy, in my opinion.
Yeah, that's so true.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, I totally can only imagine what they would. I mean, I've seen some of them in person, and I think anybody that hasn't surfed with pro surfers in the water, it's like totally different looking at a tiny little screen and seeing somebody like from a camera that's like 50 feet and 100 feet away from the surfer versus like seeing it in person, the guy like a couple feet from you. It's like,
Man, it's so
insane.
so different from video to real life. I always tell people like who don't really know about surfing and they're watching surfing videos and they're like, "Well, that looks cool." I'm like, "Well, if you saw it in real life, it's just such a different thing. It moves so fast, and you can kind of hear also sometimes from the beach. You can hear the board like slapping the lip, and you see all this water flying. It's the best show on earth, in my opinion. I think surfing is the best spectacle on earth when done right.
Oh my God, I totally agree. Like,
Hmm.
I'll be in the water and I'll literally get like shivers. I'll be like, "Oh my, that was
Yeah,
fucking gnarly."
yeah,
You know, I'll be
yeah.
like,
And it gives you shivers because it's art. It's a form of art. It's not just a
yeah,
sport. It's a form of art. So you feel something when you see it. People express themselves on a surfboard. I'm a big believer that the way you surf kind of reflects a bit on who you are as a person.
yeah, totally. I mean,
Yeah.
that's really interesting. I mean, I totally agree. I know that your dad, you know, he's a DJ and he's really into music, and you play music as well. So
Yeah,
you come from this artistic family, and it just makes sense that that infuses your surfing.
for sure.
And that must make it so much more beautiful and engaging and fun as well to think of,
Hmm.
okay, I'm drawing these lines on a wave the way like a painter would draw lines on a canvas, right?
Yeah, and surfing and music go hand in hand a lot of the times. A lot of surfers play music. You look at guys like Tom Curran, Kelly Slater, Connor Coffin. Shoot, I'm sure Donovan Frankenreiter. I mean, there is so many good surfers that are really wonderful musicians. I think it goes hand in hand. There's a similar mindset. Be hard to explain it, but it,
Yeah.
it just goes hand in hand. You're in the sun, surfing waves. You grab the guitar. I don't know.
Yeah.
It just seems like that's what you do, and it is what you do.
So what music goes on in your head when you're doing airs? Is it gangster rap or is it chill music or what?
Yeah, my music's different than a lot of surfers. I listen to a lot of gangster rap. I don't know. I've just been into it for so long that I don't know. I grew up listening to Snoop Dogg and Dr. Dre and all that, and I knew all the words to their shit before I even knew any English. Like my dad's American friends would come to France and be like, "You know, he's saying all the fucking words, right? Like he's saying everything." And my dad's like, "He doesn't know what he's saying." But yeah,
That's
that
sick.
yeah, it's rap for me. It's rap music. It's
Oh yeah.
always it's always rap or R&B. So yeah.
Nice. No, I can see
Mhm.
that. I think I see that in your surfing actually. I can totally see that. I mean, I think it's cool too. I think there's a lot of pros that have hip hop, like especially the Hawaiians. They love hip hop music
Oh yeah,
in their clips. You know, it's
yeah.
always
They
sick
they got a little gangster in them, those Hawaiians, you know.
for sure, for sure. All right, so you were competing a bunch, and so when did you start coaching, or like how did that process begin?
I wouldn't even say I'm like a coach. I'll help people if they. I'm more of like a friend. I'm a friend that surfs, and I'll coach you, but I'm not going to be like your coach. I'm just going to be there and I'll give you some advice. I'll film you some waves and we'll froth on the good stuff and talk shit about the bad stuff and then bring it down the middle and just try to see how we can improve. But I mostly just try to be a friend for whoever wants me to coach them and go surf with them, give the bit of advice I have to give. But
Yeah.
surfing is a hard thing to coach. Um, I know it's like easy to be like, oh, what's the best technique about this and that, but I think it's a big feeling thing. So
Mm.
I think the best way to become a better surfer is to try stuff, fall. You know, if you feel like you get caught up on this, try to move your feet a certain way and see if you get caught up again on the next wave. Watching surf videos of your favorite surfers, slowing it down, switching it up. Parker Coffin switches up a lot of the surf videos that he watches. So he'll put Dane Reynolds in like Goofy Foot, and he'll
Oh,
study
right.
that. Yeah, it's really interesting, and it's a good way to also get better at surfing yourself. If you got videos of yourself or photos of yourself, you like do the mirror effect, and it kind of separates you from being so personal to yourself. It looks like somebody else surfing, so you can kind of break it up a little easier.
Interesting. So you mean you take your own footage,
Mm-hmm.
you flip it so you're like, if you're regular, you flip it so you're goofy,
Yeah.
and then you can break it down, and then that way you can be critical about it in a way that you might not be with yourself, because it's always,
Absolutely.
yeah, interesting.
Exactly. It totally separates you from it being you. It becomes less personal and you can actually be a little more critical.
Oh, that's sick. Well, okay, so you talked about how it's feeling, right? It's
Hmm.
feeling. I
Yeah,
mean, what I think that's so true, because what we're trying to do in surfing is so complex, right? And I
it
think
really is.
what makes it really hard is like, especially unless you get content of yourself and you see footage of yourself, it's hard to know what good feeling, you do something and then you'll be like,
Mm,
oh, that felt, you don't know whether that was good or bad. And it's not
yeah.
until you begin to be able to connect the dots and you're like, oh, I saw the footage. Oh, that looked good. Oh, what was that feeling again? And then you'll be like,
Uh-huh.
okay, I need to look for that feeling next time.
Hmm.
That's kind of what you're saying, right?
Absolutely. I mean, sometimes I'll do a turn surfing and I'll be like, wow, that was probably so sick. And then I'll look at it on camera and be like, oh my God, like that is just horrible. And then sometimes I'll be like, oh, that felt pretty lame. Like that was kind of whack. And then you'll see the footage and it looks good. So the best way is to see yourself surf and to try to, when you see that clip of yourself, try to remember what it felt like on that wave also while you're watching it. Like what did that exactly feel like every little fraction of that second? And just pause, slow down, just overwatch your clips. I'm an overwatcher of my clips, and sometimes my wife will be like, "Man, like you're watching it so much." I'm like, "I'm trying to figure this out." I'm trying to figure out how to make this better.
Right. She's probably like, you're so self-absorbed, and really in your head, you're like, actually, you don't realize I'm talking shit about myself the
Yeah,
entire time. Like, it's not vanity. It's more like the opposite of that.
yeah. I'm a little too critical of myself. I'll obsess a little bit, so I need to find a way to chill out about that.
Well, it's interesting though, because I was talking with a buddy, and he's asking me for advice on his technique or whatever, and I was telling him, and it's interesting. I think what is interesting is, I think the better you get, the more critical of all those tiny little details you get, and
For sure.
like a beginner surfer doesn't even see them. I was like, hey, you should pay attention to this or that, and he'd be like, do you mean this? And I'll be like, yeah, that, but like look at all these other things as well. And
Yeah,
he's just like, oh, I never would have thought to think about this or that or whatever it is. And there's just
yeah.
like all these little details that you have to pay attention to. Um,
There's
but
so much that goes into it.
yeah, but
Hmm.
that's obviously what you're developing. And then you have to translate that into like, what do you feel in your body as well? And that's what
Yeah,
makes it tricky. But
yeah.
I think one thing that I've seen is like, it's like in the beginning, like you have no idea what the right feeling is and you have no idea how you look. But I think the better you get, the less difference there is between what you think felt good and then what is actually good becomes, right? Is that something that you've experienced?
Yeah, once you start actually seeing on the camera exactly what it felt like to you, you know you're kind of heading towards the right place. And that takes a lot of time surfing and a lot of time watching yourself surf. A lot of people don't get to be filmed a lot, so it's hard to get better. But here in El Zonte and other certain places, there's filmers and photographers all over the place. So you can always find your clips, and you can really study yourself, and like you're saying, kind of meet the feeling and what it actually looks like. Let it meet in the middle, and you can start really picturing it while you're doing it. And yeah, that's a good sign once that happens, once you start seeing what you're feeling.
Right, right.
Mm-hmm.
And so let's just talk about something like let's just talk about a bottom turn, for example. Like,
Yeah.
and I know this can be hard to articulate, right?
Oh yeah.
But like, you know, if you were talking to, you know, someone who's trying to get better at their bottom turns, like what feeling are you looking for?
You're looking for that tiger, like you make yourself small and tight, and you're looking for that speed out of it. You're looking for that torque, that speed. You want your hips out, your shoulders to bring your hips to where you go. You want your eyes to be on the prize. And the bottom turn, man, that's the foundation of like everything. Speed and a good bottom turn, and you have a good top turn, for sure. But I think bottom turning, it's like you can try to pump towards the wave, towards the section. You're pumping towards the section, and until you're at the bottom turn and you look up right here, like that's where you know exactly what you're gonna do. You can have a good idea, like, oh, I'm gonna do a carve or whatever, but you don't know how tight that carve is gonna be until you're like in the middle of your bottom turn and just ready to send it. So the bottom turn's so crazy because it's technical itself, but you have to be also thinking a couple steps ahead, like what am I gonna do right here? So it's in the moment slash like in a few moments as well, the bottom turn. It's crazy.
Right. It so much of it is getting those reps in, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like you get
Mm-hmm.
like you know how a wave is going to be, but
Yeah.
let's say you go into your bottom turn and then you're trying to predict how the wave is going to be, and then as you're kind of projecting up into that lip, you have to essentially make micro adjustments depending on what the face is actually doing, and then that
Yeah.
determines kind of how what you actually do, right? And then you have to
Yeah.
adjust from there. But
Yeah. It's like, are you gonna pivot around your backhand, or are you gonna send that backhand back here to gain that extra speed?
mhm,
Are you gonna go straight to the lip, or are you gonna go a little wider? But it's
yeah,
all about that coil. You compress and then you open up once you get towards the going up part of it. But on that bottom part, you really want to get tight, you know?
hmm So
Hmm.
what kind of feelings should people be looking for when you say tight? Are you feeling like, how would you describe it?
Like a tiger about to pounce, man. Like
Mm, okay.
like about to pounce and then attack towards the lip. It's yeah.
Mm,
I think like a tiger is like a good way to put it. You want to feel like attack mode. You want to get that speed, and you want to really use that energy of that speed during your bottom turn, and it should feel like you're blowing up at the lip. It should feel like you're
mm,
bouncing off the bottom into the top. In my
interesting.
opinion, that's my
Yeah.
humble opinion.
No, I like that way of thinking about it.
Hmm.
You know, it's interesting because I like that analogy because you're talking about like a tiger and coiling up, right? So like I'm imagining this
Hmm.
tiger like about to do this big
Yeah,
jump, right? And then
yeah.
what is the tiger gonna do that big jump? First, he's gonna like get all the way compressed, right? Get as low as
Hmm.
possible, and then from that position, he can spring and jump as high as he can, right? And
Yeah.
so like when you're going in, like you're coiling up, you're compressing, you're getting into that tiger like
Yeah.
compressed stance. Like when you're kind of going up into the lip, that's when you're exploding, like you said. So are you
Hmm.
envisioning just like pushing as hard as you can, or like, like how would you
Yeah.
explain that part of it?
I think a lot of it's the breathing too. Like you
Mm-hmm.
compress for your bottom turn, so you let a little bit of air out
Mm-hmm.
when you coil up, and then for the explosion in the lip, just sometimes I'll even make a noise, like I'll hear people or myself like like, or like a big
Mm,
blow. A, a big part of surfing is the breathing, but yeah, when you're exploding into that lip, you want to have all that compressed energy from your bottom turn just completely
mm.
completely let it go once you hit that lip. Sometimes you don't want to let it go too much because you don't want to slide out, or but you
Right,
want
right,
to
right.
you want to have your eyes on the prize like a tiger, and once you hit that prize, you want to hit it correctly. You want to get the right part of it.
Yeah,
Mhm.
interesting. Yeah, I like that. I like that analogy.
Mhm.
And it's interesting because I like the way you think about it too, because I think as you know, a lot of surfers, I'm just thinking about like if I were a complete beginner surfer, I'm thinking back to when I was a beginner surfer. I'm like, you're so afraid of wasting the wave, you know, because you're like,
Mm-hmm.
I caught a wave, I'm standing up. You don't want to blow it, right? And as a
Yeah.
result, you become really conservative in the way that you surf. You're like, oh, if I do this, I might fall off, or I do that,
Yeah.
I might fall off, right? And then as a beginner surfer, that's good because being conservative allows you to just like ride the wave. But then
Mm-hmm.
once you begin to develop and you want to surf better, you have to take more risks, right? And so that
Yeah.
means you have to get a little bit more aggressive and you
Yeah.
have to like try to really compress and all these things. But you're scared to because you're scared. I don't want to waste this wave. I don't want to blow it. Like you said, you just have to like make a lot of mistakes sometimes and you have to take those risks so that you
Yeah.
can, you know, get to that next level, you know, and then it's a risk, but you
Yeah.
know, there's reward as well, right? I mean,
You gotta risk it for the biscuit, man. You gotta try to. If you fall, it's not a waste of a wave. You know, most likely somebody's gonna get it afterwards anyway. And I mean, if you fall, who knows? Like you might have landed it and done the best turn of your life. And I think that's worth more than just safe surfing. And I think that's more of a waste of a wave, safe surfing it, than
mhm,
than trying to blow up or trying. Even if you're not trying to be super aggressive and technical, if you're trying to just like do some sick carves and some cool layback turns and trying to switch up your stance and your style, just try to do things. Who cares about falling? Like falling is part of surfing. Falling is part of life. You got to fall to get back up and learn something and get better. If you try a big old air and you don't land it, chances are you're going to kind of feel what you did wrong there, what went wrong. And when you get that same section again, you can go for that same air and get a few steps further towards landing it.
yeah, so true. What
Mm-hmm.
is that saying? It's not win or lose, it's win or learn, right? Like
Yeah.
you're not blowing the wave. You learn your lesson from it, and next time you can be like, all right, I'm not going to do this, or I'm going to adjust my weight this way or that way,
Yeah, I
and
like
then that
that.
can all, well, yeah, hmm. Yeah, I really like
Hmm.
that. I like the tiger analogy. I feel like I got to add some. You know what I got to do? I need to listen to some hip hop right before I come out. I need to listen
Yeah.
to some old school stuff, and then get into that
Hmm.
aggressive mind too. Just go all out, you know. Like,
Yeah.
oh man, yeah,
Yep. Yep.
sounds fun.
Just don't act like a jerk to people because you feel all gangster.
Exactly. You got to
Yeah.
still pay attention to etiquette and all that.
Yeah.
Well, what was
Etiquette's a
that like?
huge thing.
You know, what was, I mean, because you're from, you know, you probably surf Ring Colin all the time. I've only surfed it like once when it was pumping and crazy.
Hmm.
I mean, it was insane. Like I
Yeah.
was walking down and it was just like, I just saw like barrel after
Yeah.
barrel after barrel, and it breaks so close to the water too that it's
Oh
just
yeah.
like, I mean, right to the beach. You're just like,
Yeah.
this is like the perfect stream wave. But there were
Oh my
also
God.
like 200 people out there.
I know
And
it's such a mix of things. It's like the best wave ever, and it's like the most annoying wave ever too. It's just so crowded.
yeah. And I
Yeah.
remember, so I paddled out, and on every wave, it'd be like 5 people taking off on the same wave almost. I mean, it was crazy because I was like, this almost is like Malibu. Like people would drop in and then kick
Hmm.
out. And I was like, I thought that was only Malibu that when there's certain like beginner spots, they do that.
Yeah.
And then I just remember this like old timer dude. He was just like, he just paddled out and he just looked around. And he's like, "Where are all these fuckers from? Like,
Yeah.
I don't know all of you." And he just
Yeah.
like paddles right up to the point and just catches one. But like,
Yeah.
what you know, surfing in those situations? Like, how do you think about etiquette in these really crowded, you know, situations?
I think at Rincon and in the Santa Barbara area, we're all slowly becoming that old guy that pedals out and goes like, "What the hell is going on out here?" Yeah,
Yeah.
there was a lot of different times. Rincon's, first of all, it's my favorite wave in the world, and I've always had fun out there. There's been some sessions where it gets aggro. Uh, Etiquette's an important thing, and I feel like we're starting to miss on it a little bit in a lot of places in the world, and a lot of backpedaling, a lot of people snaking, burning, and yeah, it turns to aggroness a lot of the times. There's some beach fights, and that's part of surfing. There's always going to be some fighting happening, but I think surf instructors, when they teach surfing, they need to just take 10 simple minutes on the beach before going to push you into waves and doing 1, 2, 3, get up. I think they
Yeah.
need to take a good 5-10 minutes, and you can just draw a wave in the sand on the beach, and explain like if you're here, don't go. If like if you're here, this is your priority. If not, this is not your priority. Don't paddle around people and go for the first wave that comes to you after you just got one. If we took a little time to express that, to explain that to new surfers, I think we would have a lot more fun all together in the water, and there'd be a lot more respect and a lot less confusion. Because sometimes some guys like, fuck you, you don't own the ocean, It's like, I know, man, it's just you're not respecting the rules. It's like if I walked into a jiu-jitsu gym as a white belt and try to argue with the black belts about jiu-jitsu. It's just like, that's not how that works. So yeah, etiquette's a big thing, and it's all over the world. It's not just at Rincon. I see it here in El Salvador too.
Right.
I mean, anywhere I've ever gone, I see it. Etiquette, lack of etiquette, and some people have really good etiquette, and they try to explain that lack of etiquette, and they get seen like an asshole. It's like, I'm not trying to regulate on you or localize on you. I'm just trying to let you know how you can have a more pleasant experience with surfing along with all of us. This is the world. We all live in it. Let's try to learn some things.
Totally. I mean, it's interesting because there's sometimes those people that just don't respect etiquette, and you can just tell they get into like altercations with people all the time. And I'm just like, dude, aren't you miserable as a surfer just getting into fights all the time? Like if you act like that here, you definitely act like this in other spots, and you're definitely going to get called out like other people like in other spots. So like that must not be fun, like that doesn't sound fun.
It's not fun. And I used to be the miserable guy on the other side of things. I used to be so aggro when I was younger. I don't know, there was this pride and ego thing. And I just used to be so aggro. I always wanted to fight, and that's miserable too, That's a shitty feeling too. I started not even enjoying myself surfing. So yeah, you want to be chill. You want to surf. You want to respect the locals, respect the rules, and catch your waves that are for you. Not other people's waves. Nobody wants to see your butt in front of them when they get away.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Well, what is your opinion on localism in surfing?
I think part of it is needed. I think sometimes they go too far with it, but I think localizing and regulating, as long as it's not too aggro and you're not saying like, I'm going to beat your ass on the beach, like that's too much. But I think it's good to educate people, to say, hey man, like you just burned me. That's not how you want to do things. I'm a local over here, and like locals are in priority most of the time. And I think it's good to have some localizing, because without it, it just becomes mayhem. Not necessarily localizing, but regulating, managing, making sure everybody's kind of aware of what's going on out there,
Totally. I mean, I'm of the same opinion, because if you ever surf a spot that doesn't have any locals, it's mayhem. It's complete chaos, we've probably surfed spots, and it just becomes a total like cluster, and you're just like, oh my God, this is just ridiculous, it's pretty bad.
Yeah, it becomes Malibu.
Yeah, well, I mean, I know Malibu kind of has locals too, but I would imagine Malibu, even the locals probably go crazy because there's just so many people there. But
you know Malibu pretty well, right?
I haven't surfed it a ton. No, I haven't surfed it a ton. No,
I've heard like the rules are a little different in Malibu. Like at least back in the day, I don't know, but I heard that there's like less priority or something like that. But I don't know. I never really surfed Malibu, so I don't know. Well, all I know is you can't paddle out at Rincon and burn like. But they do it. There's like 4 people per wave, and that's ridiculous. I don't think that's okay.
Right. Well, I think at Malibu, because there's a lot of loggers, there's more of like a practice of like sharing waves. So I think there's more of that. But then there's also certain heavies where you do not do that with it. That's what my friends at Surf Malibu tell me. There's like certain guys that you can do that with, and certain guys or girls that you cannot do that with. And you
I wouldn't go out there and burn Alan Sarlo or something like that. That would be crazy.
Yeah, you got to be careful. I mean, the thing is that if you're a beginner surfer, you don't know who anybody is, and you're just like, I don't know. You can just go out there and burn everybody, but maybe you'll have fun. I don't know. Maybe,
if you're super selfish, you'll have fun burning everybody.
Yeah, exactly. So I know that you coach some like kind of pretty up and coming surfers in El Salvador. Like, what kind of stuff do you work on with them?
I coach this kid Sasha, and he's a rad kid. He's been here since he was like 3 years old. He's like Canadian, El Salvadorian. He speaks 3 languages. He speaks English, Spanish, and French. He's got a good surfing. He's got good surfing skills, and with him, we just work more on, like, oh, like I ask him, what do you feel like you could have done different on this wave when we're looking at it? He's like, oh, I feel like I got a little hung back on my heels on this carve, or oh, I feel like I kind of passed this section. And I'm like I said, I'm just there as a friend. I just want to talk about surfing, and it's one of my favorite things to do is talking about surfing. So yeah, I just sit there and I talk about surfing with them. It's not like a for sure conversation we're gonna have. It's gonna be about this and that. It's always just about surfing. Like, oh, maybe this section right here you could have cracked it instead of go under it, or maybe you went too far back on this carve, you got stuck in the whitewater, it took you a minute, you missed this section. Kind of like situational stuff,
Breaking it down, yeah.
Yeah.
And I would imagine because he's a really good surfer, like at that level, it becomes much more of that, right? Because there's obviously technique things to refine, but then he probably has the fundamentals, and it's more about figuring it all out.
Yeah,
Well,
he's a good surfer.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
So it's definitely, and I think that's what's interesting as well, is like when you think about like the dudes that coach the pros, like there's obviously technique stuff, but a lot of it's just like mindset stuff, and like okay, like getting to know the wave and being like, helping them with like, all right, and you hear the ins and outs of this wave and whatnot. It's a lot less technical, and it's more like all the other stuff, right?
Exactly. A coach at that level is like an outside eye for you, it's like a third eye watching you, and just giving you not advice, because if you're Griffin Colapinto and you're with Snaketails, I doubt Snake is like telling him like, oh, like your feet should be more like this, and like I'm pretty sure he's just like, oh, like you should have landed that air, dude, like what were you doing, or like like oh, like that was huge, you killed that one. I'm assuming it's like that. I'm not there with them, but I'm assuming that it's more of like a friend that's there in your corner to just give you the vibes, and give you space when you need it, give you love when you need it.
Yep.
Just being a good friend. I think being a good coach is just being a good friend.
Yeah, I like that. So that's at like pretty high level, right? But what about, talking to somebody that's, let's say, more beginner, lower, intermediate? What are some of the most common mistakes that you see in the water where you're like, oh man, I see this, all these people making this one mistake? Is there anything like common mistakes that you see people struggle with that you give advice about?
I see people kick out of waves that they think is ending because it's like a little slower part of the wave, and then the wave like speeds back up and has like the best section down the line. I see people do that a lot. I think you should really stick with the wave, like ride it till the wheels fall off. Don't just kick out because I got the first part and now it's getting slower. Excuse me. Ride it. Finish your waves. Keep trying to get it until there's nothing left. And finish your waves. Finish on your feet. If you're trying to be a progressive, high performance surfer, finish your waves. Link it up. And another mistake I see is people, the wave choice thing. I think people get a little impatient. They'll go for the first thing that comes to them, and then they kick out of the wave, and there's like a really good set out the back. I see that a lot too. I think being patient and being persistent with the waves that you're surfing. Just really try to get the most out of it, and try new stuff. Always try new things.
Yeah, just gotta risk it for the biscuit, as you said, right?
Yeah. Smash that lip, Just don't just windshield wiper it. Like, try to get the fins out. Try to push the tail. Get a little layback. Put some flair. Make it dramatic. Kelly Slater's amazing at that. He makes everything so dramatic, and it just adds this dance kind of feel to it. This dramatic feel. It's cool.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, that's epic. I think we are pretty much coming up on time, but how should people get a hold of you? What's your Instagram handle for those that are just listening on the, just on the audio on the podcast?
Yeah, my Instagram is my name, all in one word. It's Antoine Allain. For French people, that's like a John Smith, but over in the US and everywhere else, that's a weird name. But yeah, ANTOINEALLAIN, all in one word. Simple. And I'm mostly on Instagram, so that's the easiest place to reach me.
All right, sick. Well, any last words from you? Any shout outs, anything like that?
Oh man, shout out Mesa Surfboards. shout out Bill the Grill. Shout out my dad, my wife. Shout out to you, Vin. Shout out to all the El Zonte locals. And yeah, just there's so many people I could shout out. This is crazy, but yeah, I just stoked to be here with you. And for all those people watching, make sure you risk it for the biscuit and smash every wave you get. Have fun. Try to feel it out.
Hell yeah. All right. Thanks, man.
Yeah.
Hey everyone, it's Van. Hopefully you've been enjoying the podcast. Hopefully you've been listening to some good stories, getting some good tips that are helping you improve as a surfer. If so, make sure to subscribe to the podcast, leave us a review. It'll only take you literally a few seconds, and share it with your friends. That's the best way you can support me so I can continue to create awesome new content for you. So thanks.